Calling this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. And Ursula, could you lead us in the pledge,
I
please?
can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm always glad when we can meet in person, all here, and I believe Rebecca is online. Okay, so I think we're all present and accounted for. Okay. I just wanted to start out today honoring yesterday, which was Columbus Day and Indigenous People Day. And I just wanted to read a couple sentences. This gal here, this is her first book. It's called Gathering Moss. Rebecca, you might be familiar with this. The author is Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she is a botanist, but she is also a storyteller for Native American stories. And she usually weaves botany into the Native American stories. And this chapter I'm reading right now is Indigenous Uses of Moss. But the author is talking to a teacher in the Native American tribe and talking about their education system. They are in the process, in this book, they were in the process of buying a school building, an old school building. And so he's explaining a little bit what education means in that Native American community. He says, and this is a quote, "In indigenous ways of knowing, it is understood that each living being has a particular role to play. Every being is endowed with certain gifts, its own intelligence, its own spirit, its own story. Our stories tell us that the Creator gave these to us as original instructions. The foundation of education is to discover that gift within us and learn to use it well." And I think that just describes what we try to do in Kalispell Public Schools. So I just wanted to open with that. I got the wrong thing up here. I'm gonna say, wait a minute, we already talked about board priorities.
Yeah, but I like that.
Yeah, I just like to share things like that. So approval of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to read them?
Yeah.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve them?
I move we approve the minutes for joint community vote at the same time.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Thank you, Kim. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Minutes have been approved unanimously. Recognitions and student reports, our presentations. Do we have Asher here? Asher Stanfield. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Asher Stanfield, and I'm a 7th grader at KMS right now. This year has been my first year doing cross country. We have 46 kids on our team. Today was our last day of practice. We have our first meet tomorrow, our last meet tomorrow at Rebecca Farms. Hopefully we can win. Today at practice, we all got awards. I got the Energizer Bunny Award. It was fun. Thus far, our boys have won 4 of our meets. We've had 6 so far, and our girls have won 2 of them, so yeah, we're doing pretty good. And then at KMS right now, there have been some field trips going on, such as 2/3 of 7th grade going to Glacier National Park. Unfortunately, I was not a part of that 2/3. I was part of the 1/3 that did not go, but I believe there are plans to do that in the spring, so that'll be just as fun. We just have to wait. And then also, the 6th graders, depending on their homerooms, went to either Heron Park, Lawrence Park, or West Shore State Park, which sounds super fun. also My Voices for Me, which is like the Spirit of Leadership Club. It's some kids chosen by teachers to plan fundraisers and student events such as Spirit Week. Fundraiser that's currently happening is we're selling hot chocolate and mochas every Friday morning. Two of the My Voice kids get there early and set that up, so that's very fun. Parent-teacher conferences are on November 4th. And as I'm sure you all know, the Flathead Valley population is going up a lot. And the KMS numbers match that, as we had 1,049 kids in 2018 through 19, and this year we had 1,075, an increase of 26 kids. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Asher? Will?
Yeah, sure. How do they determine who got to go to the park and who was in the other third that didn't go?
So there's, at KMS we have teams, and that's just a way of kind of dividing them so that way all of our classes are near each other, and some of the teams were able to get reservations and some of them weren't. Maybe it was buses, I forgot. Either way, Equinox was, that's the team my mom was not able to get one, but I think they did in the spring, so we're gonna do it in the spring, but we didn't have a chance to do it in the fall.
So, how many teams are there?
3 for each grade, so 9 overall. And in 6th grade, instead of teams, they're more like pods, where they're a little bit more connected because it's a big building and they're new to it.
Huh? And your team name was what?
Equinox.
And the other two teams?
For 7th grade, it's Galaxy and Polaris.
Cool.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I have a question. Asher, what elective are you in right now?
I'm taking orchestra and cooking, which is super fun.
That's great.
Okay. There are no other questions. Thank you, Asher. I appreciate you. And let's see, we don't have Tanya right now?
She's back there.
Oh, she is, there. Okay, come on up. You're behind the divider here.
All right, is this on? Push the button until it turns green. There we go. All right, my name's Tanaya, and I'm a senior at Flathead. And I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how the Spirit Week went back when I talked to you guys last time. We had a really good assembly, and it was like the first assembly that we had in like a year and a half, I guess, since because of COVID. So it was like insane energy. Everyone was so involved, excited in their like class colors, and it was probably like the best assembly I've been to yet. It was super fun, and there was a lot of school spirit that whole week. And then we had our student section at our football game, which was super fun. A lot of kids came, and I think everyone was pretty excited about that. And then we also had a parade before the football game, which all the teams and clubs were able to participate in and kind of show up and represent their activity. And then at our dance on Saturday, we had about 1,000 kids at the dance, which was really cool. It seemed like everyone had a fun time. We didn't have homecoming last year, so I think kids were pretty excited about that. But through all of that, social gatherings and all of that, it didn't seem like had a COVID spike at all, which was really good. We've been going through school good, I guess, so that's exciting. And then with fall sports, we're kind of coming to a close in the next couple of weeks. We have our, at Rebecca Farms, we have a cross-country meet tomorrow. And then Thursday, we have a volleyball cross-town game against Glacier, and it's a pink out. So we're all going to be wearing pink. I'm pretty excited. I have some neon pink leggings. I'm excited about that. And then Friday, we have another cross-town against Glacier, but it's a football game. And so that's going to be really exciting, too. I think our theme is Hunt the Pack, so everyone's going to be wearing, like, camo and stuff. Yeah, so I think golf is done, cross country's coming to a close, and then in the next week, I think soccer is starting their final competitions. And then last week on Friday, we also had a Special Olympics basketball, and I was volunteering for that to help out. I think we had about 15 high school students volunteering, and there was maybe about 50, 60 basketball players participating, and we had both gyms, and we, it was really fun. It was super cool. I think all the players and all the people running it were just super excited, and I got to talk to some of the athletes, and they were saying, one guy was saying he had been involved in this for 17 years, and I was like, wow, I've been alive for 17 years. That's awesome. So that was pretty cool. And then this fall, we have some choir concerts going on. Actually, tonight we have a choir concert and an orchestra concert over at Glacier, but the choir concert's here. And then our marching band is doing their final marching band thing this Friday at the Crosstown football game. And then also this Saturday, our Flathead band is going down to Bozeman to play at the MSU football game. I think it's a Montana program where they all get together and they play at the game, which is actually super cool. I know a lot of kids, talked to some kids today, and they're saying they're really excited about that. So I think that's an awesome opportunity. And then through this whole fall, I think it was in the first week of school, they did auditions for our theater play, Lightning Thief, and that's going to be performed in early November, so that'll be pretty exciting too. Yeah. Did you guys have any questions about any of that?
No questions for Hanaya? I will get your name right one of these times.
Yes, don't worry, you have, I think, 8 or 9 more months.
I promise I'll get it down by then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for all the time.
Okay, building update, Glacier. Brad.
That's a tough act to follow, these two. Knowing both of them, they're some of our best and brightest right there. So Beth is handing out a couple of handouts that I would like to go over as I talk through some of the things that we've got going on this year at Glacier. So I'll give her just a second here. So first of all, I want to just say thank you for taking time to listen to what we're working on this year, some of the initiatives that we're going through, and some things that we kind of put in place at the start of this year. We are full, just like everybody else has said. So on behalf of our 1,356, I think is what I saw yesterday, and our 100+ staff members, I guess I appreciate the time to come talk to you. I want to start with the blue sheet that you have in front of you. And I think the first thing is that anytime there's something new within a school, one of our goals is to make sure it's something that sticks, that it's not a one and done kind of thing that, teachers see, oh, we did this year and next year it's gone. So as we talk through these things today, keep that in the back of your mind, that these are things that administratively, but also with our department leaders and our staff, that we want to stick and be part of what our school culture has. So as far as the virtue piece, one of the areas we want to talk around was academics and lifelong learners. And I think, when we talk about lifelong learners, we all talk about that. We want our students to walk out of our schools and be lifelong learners, but we wanted to put something tangible to that, and something for them to really be able to say, that's what it looks like. And so, this idea of these virtues is to give them some characteristics, and each month we're highlighting one of those. And what we asked our teachers to do at the start of the year was to think about their lessons, think about their activities, think about their questioning, not to add one more thing to their plate, but for them to just reflect on what they're doing and how the things that they do on a daily basis reflect some of these virtues. And so we started in September with curiosity, a great one to start the school year with. What are they doing in their classroom? How does it look? Those sorts of things. And then every month, we're asking the department to recognize a student within their class that displays curiosity, for example, in September. And we asked the science department. We thought that made perfect sense on that first month. We're on to October at this point with open-mindedness and what that looks like in terms of problem solving and being able to approach a problem from a lot of different ways. The recognition piece for students has been, I got to tell you, this is one of the best things so far in my job that I've been able to do. So at the end of September, the science department, they sent myself and Alan a name, and I called those kids down to my office, each one of them individually. And so you can imagine the group of kids that are being recognized for their academic work in the classroom don't often get a pass to come down to the principal's office. So they're all walking down there and they're wondering what they're going to hear from me. And to just be able to sit down with them for a few minutes and recognize what they're doing in their classrooms and that their teacher saw something in them. In this case, it was curiosity, but also all the other good things. That has been a really good, positive thing in my world, at least. And it has been a really good connection with kids. And so I'm looking forward to that throughout the year, to take the time at the end of each month to do that. The other piece that has been, I think, really good, and I had two conversations just today with teachers where we were talking about their curriculum and what they're doing in their classrooms, and it all came back to this idea right here of these virtues, for what we're calling them, and just kind of the big picture, and I guess giving them a sense of purpose in what they're doing and tying it back to some of the things. It's been really good, positive conversations. And, from a professional development standpoint, we have a number of book studies that we're putting together for the year, and I believe it's 20 for the academic virtues. It's what our most recent number was. So we sent out a quick little survey to our staff on a couple of different areas. I'll talk about some of the other ones, but in this area, we have some staff that's really interested in this. And so from a grassroots effort to put something in your school that sustains in the culture, I feel really good about where we're going with this. And you can see where we're going each month. It doesn't necessarily go in order. We were purposeful in where we picked some things. Fortitude in January when you hit finals, and purposeful when you hit registration in February, and thinking about some of those things and just trying to impress those within our students. The question of why would we do this, I think, comes up, and there's not a lot of research that that shows that skills and content knowledge are what really sticks in the long term, but rather the idea of patterns, patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, patterns of interactions with students. And so, when we talk about this, we want them to walk out of here understanding these patterns and having the confidence to go on to whatever it is, whether that's college, career, military, or those sorts of things. Questions on this, Servant? Anything you're curious about?
So your cohort of curious kids,
Yes.
Was there one from each grade level? How did that work out?
We allowed teachers to just choose a student from their classes. It was a mixture. It wasn't necessarily, there were 10 science teachers that had an opportunity. We'll get through every faculty member throughout the course of the year. It was interesting, they were predominantly this round freshmen and sophomores, but we did have some juniors and seniors in there. And really it was kids that, maybe aren't getting recognition in other areas that aren't necessarily heavily involved in activities or anything. So they were real appreciative that their work in class was being recognized.
And what was the recognition they got when they got?
We made a keychain. We made a little Wolfpack keychain. It's just a Wolfpack head, something totally different, and they were pretty excited to get that. So,
Thanks.
Something simple. Oh, the one young man that came in and he just threw his hands up in the air and cheered that it was finally paying off to be a nerd. I said, buddy, it's going to pay off a lot for you. Yeah. So, any other questions on that one? So on the green sheet, the other area that we were talking about, so academic and lifelong learner piece, but then the other side is just supports for students and ways to help them grow. And on this is certainly not an exhaustive list of everything we do, and it's not going to be even an exhaustive list of some things that may even come up throughout the year. But our systems of support there at the top, that's what we've been doing. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 interventions that we work with, teachers, families, counselors, those sorts of things. Everything else listed below that is something that has come into play just this year. And some of it was started in the summer, and some of it has been the result of events that we know occurred at the start of the year. You know, so the question, persuade, refer, leadership training, that is the Nate Shoot suicide prevention training. And that was the direct result of some students saying, we want to help our peers. We want some more information on this. We want to know what to do and how to help them. And so that information actually is going out this week. There's a training happening November 3rd, which is an early release day for students. It's a small group, and if we have the need and the want for it, we will continue to offer that. And as well, we've had some staff that have asked for that. So that one right there is a direct result of our students asking for some of these things. And so we're partnering there within our building with the Nate Shoot Foundation on that. Student support groups, and I first want to give some credit to Matt Jensen, because this is Matt's leadership and guidance on this one. But we actually finished our 5th of 6 trainings with some staff and some community members today on some student support groups, circles, small group kind of interactions. And my goal for that is to be able to allow students to connect with peers that are having the same struggles or issues. It is not therapy, it is not diagnosis, anything along those lines, but it's yet a way for kids to connect with each other. And that's going to range, I think, in a variety of things, from everything from just healthy peer relationships and stress management on up to how do we navigate some more serious topics. We've had a good turnout for that, and I'm looking forward to see where this goes. That training finishes up next week, and at that point, we can turn it over and work with that group, and then also with our counselors and help put the student group pieces together. And I envision those could occur at lunch, on an early release day, potentially during school, whatever it looks like to help our kids connect with each other. The Chick-Fil-a Leadership Academy. This is one that Alan's actually coordinating this. We chose juniors. We talked a lot about what group do we want to, what class do we want to focus on. Again, we were limited in numbers, but we chose some student leaders from different activities and organizations within the school, and they're meeting once a month. The really nice thing about this is it fits a lot with what we do in our school. We talk a lot about gratitude. Their very first meeting that they talked about was a gratitude-based idea. They're going to hit some stuff in December where they do some things for the community, which we do. There's a service project at the end of the year. We do a lot of that in April as well with our school. And so it's a very servant leadership focus on that, and just giving kids more skills in leadership. They meet once a month, and like I said, Alan is coordinating that for us. The last two are really for staff. The social emotional learning, this is one of the other book studies that we're doing. We've reached out to some of our staff for those that are interested in doing some, tying in their objectives and what they're doing in the class to social emotional, and we have a book study set for that. And then with the Indian End for All, there's a really nice project called the Undaunted that I've sent out and coordinated with, our Montana Native American-led teacher, women in history art program, and it's got a social emotional component as well. That one is just getting off the ground. I don't know if I could tell you who all is going to do that at this point, but it just went out last week to some teachers. But it's a really nice combination of art, Native American connections. There's a nice close context reading. There's some other things that go with it. That's a really nice component as well. And so I think these are all things that there's not a one-size-fits-all. We know that with 1,350 kids, one thing isn't going to reach all of them, but a number of different things targeted at different students to help provide them some support. Questions?
So one of the things that I was wondering as I was kind of reading through this, with the identifying the students, obviously if they're struggling in school and things like this, but, ones that cover it well in the moment, do you have ways to identify those? Like with the student support group, is anyone invited, or is it by invitation?
Yes, both. It could be through counselor referral, it could be through peer referral, it could be through parents reaching out, it could be through teachers. Yes, it's open in that respect, so if there's students, as we advertise and talk about these things, if there's students that go, yeah, I need some help there, that will not be us selecting those kids, if that's answering your question there. Some of them, in the case of the leadership one, we needed to select some kids before the start of the year, but in some of these situations like that, no, we absolutely want that to be available to the students that need that and want that support. your challenge, I think what you're saying though is the biggest challenge. There are some, and we know this, but there's some students that, that do hold that in.
Mhm.
So,
At any point through the year, do all kids get, asked the question, just is there,
You know,
do you ever survey, it seems like, when my kids were in elementary school, they'd say, if there's a divorce or a death or something, to do that, but once they're in high school, it doesn't feel like that's as much a thing.
that's one piece that's not on here that let me address real quick. So I think your question, we do a mental health component in ninth grade health, and that every student gets that. The question is, what do we do in 10, 11, and 12?
Right.
And we actually had a department leader meeting last week, and that was the question that I posted, is where does this fit in our curriculums at the 10th grade level, 11th grade, 12th grade? Because there's not a natural place for some of that. And I was encouraged to hear that in our speech and media, we're doing some things that I didn't know about, quite frankly, within the media and suicide and some of those things. And I had our business teacher said, we could probably put something in our junior level course, as students are starting to look at careers and things along those lines. So I was really encouraged with that. There's a number of electives that do, but it's not that certainly doesn't hit all of our students. So I think to answer your question, we've actually started that conversation of where it fits curriculum-wise. We've got Montana social emotional competencies that we can easily embed in. It's just a question of where do they fit naturally and that they're not contrived. So.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Jack.
Talking about the meetings and professional development and the students, meeting with students, when do most of these types of meetings occur?
So, Jack, are you asking about the professional development for teachers, the book studies, for example? Is that one of them that you're?
Well, that's one of the examples. So you have this sheet here that has professional development activities, but then you have the items where the students are, it sounded like the students are trying to work with students on things. And when do each of them, professional development occurs, that's programmed in. But are there times that they meet to do things outside of that professional development training?
The student group piece, let me address that one. That student group is going to be dependent on the teacher, the community member that's involved with that, whether it occurs during a school period, with a school-sponsored type of situation, a lunch period, or potentially the early release time. So those are possibilities there. As far as the professional development with the social emotional, that piece right there, and the book studies that we were talking about with the virtues, we actually gave staff the option, do you want to use it as professional development hours, or are you just interested in it for your own professional development? So we actually have that going on in a couple of different ways where there's staff doing this outside of contract hours, and some of them have said, nope, we will just meet and use some of our time that we have because we believe it's valuable enough as well. So we've given some folks an option for that to make it, I guess, as flexible as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one thing. So, the effort to meet the SEL competency, that seems like that would be a difficult thing to measure. What mechanisms are you using for that?
I don't know if I can answer that for you right now, Will, to be honest with you.
It's tough.
I'm gonna be real honest. This is an area for me that I acknowledge at the start was one that it's one that I need to continue to work on myself. So I don't know if I can say that we have a mechanism for that. And if you read through those, students are able to express to an adult their concerns. It's things that are, like you said, you don't put a score on them. So as we look at where they fit in the curriculum, we're going to have to be looking for some outside resources for that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, next on the agenda, enrollment update. Who's going first?
I'll kick it off, and then we'll turn it over to Matt and Callie. We've actually divided up the slides between us to just provide some information to our board. We've heard twice referenced tonight, the size of our schools, and what does that look like, currently, past, and then what is that going to look like into the future? And really want this to be kind of a jumpstart to future conversations around, planning, facility planning, and some of the challenges that we're faced with, as a school district in meeting and serving the needs of all of our students. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started with some data. And, what you're seeing up here, this is our elementary schools across the top. And you can see that in that first row, those are the actual student enrollments, based on what we have in PowerSchool. So that's our student information system, our database. And you can see Edgerton has 520 students, Russell has 236. So we have 2,082 students, early K through 5, in our district right now. And then the next column below that is the target student enrollment based on the number of teachers that are in the building. And so you can see Edgerton sitting at space for 528. And so how do you determine that, how many seats you have is based on what grade level you teach. Fifth grade can have 30 students, kindergarten can have 20. So it varies from grade level to grade level. And so what we do is we try and calculate kind of a capacity. And then you see a facility capacity, and that's based on the actual number of classrooms that we have. So at Edgerton, you could basically say we have one more room that is currently being used. All the spaces are being used in our buildings, but if we had to, we could put one more classroom at Edgerton, and then we would be have maxed out our capacity from a facility standpoint. And so the actual percent of facility capacity versus actual student facility is, you can see they're in the high 90s for a lot of them. Peterson is one that is relatively low relative to the size of the building. And part of that might be what I'll just call our own doing. When we built Rankin in 2018, we redrew district boundary lines. I think you remember some tough conversations with parents about, you know, my kids has always gone to Hedges and now they got to go to Rankin. I don't understand. Why can't we just stay? Those kind of things. And so what we see is that, especially between Edgerton and Rankin, is that north and south build out of Kalispell proper. And so we're seeing enrollments in those schools being high and nearing or exceeding capacity based on our current student enrollments. And Peterson is not as high. So when you look at that in total, from a summary perspective, what that would represent is we have about 86 seats left in our elementary buildings, just based on teacher FTE, not facility capacity. So we have a little bit of room to grow. Mind if I elaborate on that? Yeah.
So one of the things I did was, I broke this down maybe a little bit more detailed than you wanted, but I'll go through this real quick. And what I want you to understand is just, you know, when we're enrolling students, we try to keep them in their home district. And then so you end up with a couple spots here and a couple spots there and a couple spots in this grade level. And so the total looks like, you know, we have some capacity to grow, but when you're actually in those schools, it would take this magical formula of we need 5 fifth graders at this school and we need 4 second graders at this school. But to give you some perspective, as Mike has said, in kindergarten, first and second grade, the state standard is 20 students per classroom. In kindergarten, we have 11 of the 17 classes that are either one above, one below, or right at that standard. So 19, 20, or 21. Our lowest class is 16, and we have 5 classes in that 17, 18 range, so their kindergartens are full. You can picture, you know, the age of those kids too. So the smallest group is 16, and we have 11 of those classes right at around 20. In first grade, the majority, 14 of our 16 classrooms in first grade are at that one below, one above, or right at. In second grade, 10 of our 17 are at that same number, one below, one above, or right at. And then we have 5 of our classes right at 17 and 1 at 18, so they're all right in that same range. In third grade,
the number goes up. So we can, in third and fourth grade, we can have 28 kids. So when we talk about that capacity for growth and those numbers, that's where a lot of these variables start to shift, is it from third through fifth grade. So in third grade, I'll just read through this real quick, give you a high overview. 2 of our classes have less than 20. The rest of our classes to 14 have more than 20. With the highest number, 5 classes have 28 kids in their 2 classes of 25, 3 of 24. So the majority are 24 plus students, with 5 of them maxed out at 28. In fourth grade, again, the standard is 28. We have 4 of those 13 total classes that are 1 below, right at, or 1 above. And then we have 4 at 26, 3 at 25, and then 2 more less than 25. So, again, bigger classes. And in fifth grade, the standard shifts to 30. And so this is really where we see the bulk of these extra numbers being available. We have 4 classes at 21 or 22 students. We have 3 classes at 23 or 24 students. And then we have 6 classes at 25 or 26 students. So we still have, if you're thinking of the space, fifth graders, fourth and fifth graders start to be a little bit bigger human beings. And so then we can put up to 30 of them, and our classes are reflecting that we do have more kids in there, but because the standard has grown, on paper, it shows that we have more spaces. And then as far as the facility capacity, one of the things that I've learned right away is that the principals have that space that was carved out during the reconstruction of those buildings, and that those rooms that were former classrooms have been turned into science, engineering, technology, math learning spaces, or they have moved the music room from the stage to actually having a classroom. So when we talk about the building capacity, what we're really talking about in some of our schools is moving classrooms back into those spaces and no longer having those other spaces. So from my very humble perspective, I would say that our elementary schools are full and they're operating like we would want them to operate, with having space for kids to go to those flex spaces and do other things.
Well said.
And one last bit, sorry, we have 7, and this is an email that'll go to Lynn later, but we have 7 of our total 90 classrooms that are above the state standard. And we address that through additional paraprofessional support that's scheduled by hour, depending on how many kids we are over. And that's a number that Lynn has been patient and flexible with us, because the numbers have gone up and down, and really we've got them down to just like 1 kid over in the majority of those classes.
So next, we have our enrollment for Kalispell Middle School and our 3 high schools. And the little box at the bottom is covering up the totals. And these were as of this morning. So we had 1,068 middle school students, 1,495 at Flathead High School, 1,355 at Glacier High School, and 189 at Linderman Education Center. So we're looking at 4,107 students right now in 6th through 13th grade for our district. And you can see like the freshman class and sophomore class, they're pushing 800 students per grade level at this point. So we're just seeing some challenges when it comes to how we staff that, and then having space available within those school buildings for the variety and depth of course curriculum and services that we offer.
With the 12th grade being, a little bit lower, substantially lower, I guess, than 11th and 10th and 9th, has that always been a smaller class? Or are there typically less 12th graders, like from kids graduating or dropping out?
Well, that's both things are right.
Okay.
So one thing that you're seeing in these high numbers with the freshman and sophomore classes is a bubble of students coming through our system right now,
Okay.
where the seniors And you'll see what our A and B averages were, or our enrollment averages were, for the last 5 years. And so these kids are gonna be part of some of those lower enrollment years.
The seniors are.
Yep.
And so should we predict that the numbers are going to be more like those 9th, 10th, and 11th graders? Or are there other years coming up that are more like the 12th graders?
That's a hard one to predict, because when we look at our high school enrollments, we capture about half of the freshmen that come in from within Kalispell Public Schools. So if we look at the middle school right now, 373 eighth graders, that's actually a really big class coming through. But then you have the growth in West Valley and Kyla and Smith Valley and Marion, and whatever their numbers are as they move through and matriculate through their elementary schools, are really what are gonna be the best predictor of that.
So, Micah, how can you have 9 super seniors and the total is 11?
Because I didn't catch that when I updated the numbers this morning.
There's always a reason.
I'm counting Alan Stanfield and Brad Holloway as my super seniors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
What was that, your question?
Yeah, so.
Okay. So then these numbers were updated on September 29th, but we just thought we'd give you a quick breakdown on gender. 1,573 male and 1,457 female. I don't know if that really relates to anything from a curriculum standpoint, but it's just sometimes good information to see. You want to talk about this? Tell me? Okay. And then we also broke it down by ethnicity. So that's one of the great things about our student information system is we can cull and report data and break it down in a variety of ways. But you can see that we are predominantly white relative to the other races that are represented up there. Matt?
Yeah, this slide has my name on it, and I've done the math a couple times, and it still doesn't come up to Micah's math. And he's been patient enough to explain it probably 3 times, and I still don't get it. So I will fumble through this and he'll clear it up.
Well, I'll let you try, and then I'll jump in and tell you what it really means.
Just start that.
Oh, no, I'm right.
So what we're trying to get at here is coming up with the big difference between how many kids have left and are coming in. And so here, the columns on where they're going and what grade levels they're leaving. That's the first slide, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so then you'll see these numbers, not the next slide, but the slide after, and it'll be the opposite order. Can you go one more? Yes, this is the opposite order. This is how many are coming in. This is where the math doesn't work for me because we follow the columns. And we have some tricky math with excluding kindergartners because those are brand new kids to us, right? So you got to add that in. But we have, big picture here, we had in-state kids leaving the system, 127 from that first slide Kelly was showing, and then out-of-state leaving us 69. And then you look at the next group of numbers, and it was 616 and 228. So big view here is we have more kids coming from in-state and out-of-state than leaving us either to a different in-school state or a different out-of-state school. And then you subtract out our kindergartners, but I still have us up like 700 kids, and Mike has us up like 300 kids. So.
Don't worry, I'm right. Just ask Gwen.
Okay, so the math major's gonna jump in here and get it settled between, the dates. So this chart, I, pulled the data on September 16th. So a lot of other data that is being used this evening was actually pulled. Did you pull it this morning or last night? This morning. So that's gonna be some of it.
Yeah, but Callie, can you go back to the exit data sheet? So on the far right, there's a number 333. So as of September 16th, we had 333 students who were in our system, right, in Power School, that are no longer with us for a variety of reasons. They went to homeschool, they went to private school, they transferred out of state, they maybe transferred to another district. And the next slide shows a little bit more breakdown of where they went. So these were transfers out of Kalispell Public Schools. And then from an in-state perspective, so Columbia, for example, 20 students left Kalispell Public Schools and enrolled in Columbia Falls School District. So that's what those numbers are representing. So 32 towns in total, 127 students transferred somewhere in state. And then on the other side, we had 69 students who transferred to 26 different states. So as we try and track enrollment and looking at it through the lens of a teacher, and you look at this transient population of kids moving in and out, and it happens all year long. This is just a snapshot in time. These numbers will look completely different by the end of the year. But we wanted to give you a picture of what that looked like. So on this slide, these are the students who came into Kalispell Public Schools as of 9/16 for this year. And you can see we picked up 24 students from Creston and Lakeside. Fairmont, Egan, and West Valley was 31. So you have these kids, and it's not that they're necessarily transferring in, like they're still living in Smith Valley. They probably moved into Kalispell Elementary District, and so that's where we see that. There are some who transfer in, and you guys approve those transfers periodically throughout the year.
The right side of the chart, the transfers in from out of state, that is the information that we get a lot of questions about from the community. It's like, you've got a lot of new students, where did they come from? When they're coming from out of state, what states are they coming from? And this right here is telling you. So 48 students as of September 16th were from California, 39 from Washington, et cetera. And then there was the rest of them kind of clumped together. 28 different states had 69 kids. But this chart we get a lot of questions about.
It's as of the 16th, is it from the first day of school or from like the last day of last year, the first day of this year?
When the student information data is rolled over.
Which starts on the first day of, okay.
Just to clarify, we'd be enrolling kids all summer. So it'd be from the end of last school year, enrolling them all summer until the 16th was when we stopped to do the math up here.
Okay, so the number, the change has happened all the way from the last day of last school year until now?
Yep.
Okay.
So this next slide is just about our enrollment, and you can see we started with school year 17-18. We had 5,926 students actual enrollment in Kalispell Public Schools. The following year, we picked up 43 students. The next year, we decreased 48 students. 2021 was what we refer to as our COVID year, and if you remember, we ended up with about 112 new high school students that year, and we lost about 200 elementary students in 2021. So, and then this year, we're up 330 students. So putting that into perspective, that's like filling Russell School from completely empty to get to that number. So you can see that the percentage increase or percentage of change from year to year, when you look at it over a 4-year period or a 5-year period, it's about a 1% growth, which is basically what we usually predict as an average. And I think it's important, and this will lead into another conversation at a different time, about how these numbers turn into funding numbers. That's when we start talking about A and B. So for example, of those 6,162 students that we currently have enrolled, some of them are going to be half-time, 3/4 time, full-time, quarter time, and so you get different values for those students when it comes to the funding. And so when you see a 5, like if we try and predict, a 1% increase on average in student population, which affects our funding, when you have a 5.66% increase, you're using last year's budget numbers to fund that group of students coming in. So that'll be a whole nother, far more interesting discussion for Jack especially. So I showed you these slides before, and I think this leads into the greater discussion around growth and facilities and, you know, what should the school board be thinking about and what direction do we want to go as we move forward. And so this is just a map of Kalispell. You can see on there for just a second, Callie. And the city actually gave me this, and they kind of bubbled in these areas where they've got developments that are either currently being built out or have preliminary approval or in very early stages of development. And then the next slide actually showed how many units they were talking about in some of these areas. So the Parkline Trail along downtown, the new one that they're constructing and doing all the work on, 500 apartment units are estimated to be going in along the Parkline Trail. So we have some big growth that's going to happen within Kalispell. But I think looking at that map and where all these things start to lay out, what we're really seeing is north and west is having the greatest impact. And when you look at the map and you see the different colors, what you're seeing is these developments are going out into the West Valley School District. So we may not see those students coming in as elementary students, but we might be seeing them come in as high school students. So there's some just some interesting aspects to this. And so then on the next slide, and I presented this at our Rotary groups. So just based off of the numbers that they gave me, not even the to be determined numbers, they had 5,195 units that they're expecting in the next 10 years, in the next 10-year build out. So that's about 520 units per year in the city for their planning purposes, for sewer, water, emergency services. They always factor in a half a child per unit. So looking at that, we could be seeing, you know, somewhere around 260 students a year in growth, which would be in keeping with at least a 1%, if not more, increase over time.
So Micah, some of this growth is not in the elementary school district, it's out in the high school districts. So some of these students we wouldn't see until they're ready for high school. Do we have an idea what that looks like?
Yes.
One means we've got to build elementary school. The other means we have to build high school.
Correct, and that's going to lead, that's a great segue into the next part of the conversation. And I'm going to let Callie talk.
I did not pay Will to ask that question. I just want everybody to know. But it is a
You
wonderful.
could pay me, that'd be all right.
It is a wonderful segue because when Matt and Mike and I were going through what we thought might be important for tonight's presentation, we decided that what if we just use an example of what if, and what are the issues that arise when a school is at capacity? And we made a short list, there's about 5 items on here of just random things, but the list could be quite lengthy when you have a school that is at capacity. For example, in our elementary, some of our students that are elementary schools may not be able to attend their neighborhood school. They're going to go across the town, get bused over there, and that's an inconvenience to some of our families to do that. Class sizes exceed standards, labs, science labs exceed recommended size for safety, and on and on. And so it impacts in just a little ways, but all the way through a school operation when you're at capacity. One of the things that we wanted to do was to provide you a concrete example of what that would look like, because of Micah's statement that some of the growth is potentially going to happen north, that will, at high school level, impact Glacier. And when Glacier was designed, it was designed first floor, second floor, and it was designed to have additions added to both the west and the east side. The design, if it were, say, in theory at capacity and we needed to add on another pod, and on another grouping. This is basically, I'm just kind of, giving you the update on the terminology. The pod is this whole thing, and within pods, you have science labs, teacher planning areas, a porch, obviously, but then you have classrooms around the perimeter of it. So when we talk in terms of, in theory, if Glacier were in the future at capacity, we have the ability to add another pod, first level and second level. This is what you're getting on one of the levels. When Glacier was built, we had all kinds of brochures and information that was available to the public about the capacity, all the way down to it had 1,488 lockers and 600 seats in the performance hall, gym seats, parking spots that had a little bit of everything. And it was designed for 1,500 students as the capacity. And right now, we are at 1,359. So using that, pulling the thread, say in the future, if Glacier's at capacity and we need to, current capacity and we need to increase it so that we can have 1,900 students attend Glacier, this is what it would look like. There's where we'd add that full pod of classrooms on the main level and upstairs. There'd be 6 instructional classes per level. We'd have to have student lockers added, teacher planning areas, 2 small conference rooms. And this, when you get down to the science, music, and art, this is also something that can't be overlooked because a lot of those are graduation requirements. So when you're at a school capacity that you're building up to 1,900 or at 1,900, you got to make sure that all your students can meet the graduation requirements. We'd have to add minimum of 4 science labs. We currently, at Glacier, do not have an open classroom at all right now. And we do not have open science labs. So if we bump that up another 400 students or so, we'd have to definitely have science labs, music classrooms, art classrooms, tech labs. You are estimating that 10 to 15% of your student population will be supported by an IEP, so there's a good chance you would need another special education classroom to support our students, and 7 student support offices. Right now we have, and I'm using Glacier as an example, but when we designed Glacier, we had conference rooms, 1 conference room with each pod. Now, pretty much all those conference rooms are gone because we have had to put our mental health teams in those rooms. They're using them as their offices. And so that, we would have to increase, to meet OPI accreditation standards for counselors, we'd have to increase the office capacity there. And so it kind of just get dominoes. And then an auxiliary gym and a fitness center that would support 1,900 students.
How many students are at Blackhead right now?
1,495.
Okay, so it's only a little, I knew that it was a little more than Glacier, but it's about what Glacier's capacity, like supposedly is where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. So when it happens that you go over capacity and you can't meet graduation standards, how does that typically handle? Do you just move kids in the next year, or?
There's a couple things, and we actually have it going on right now at Glacier. We do not have the capacity right now to have all our freshmen take a health class, and so we delay it later. They might end up taking health to sophomore, junior, or senior year. And so that isn't on a small case-by-case basis unusual, but it's not something you want with a lot of required classes. makes it very challenging.
I would like to ask a question. As you look around the valley, I would imagine the growth is probably pretty universal, but, are there any, you guys aware of any, communities out there that are really seeing a crowding issue at this moment that's, above, and maybe you're in a tough spot now?
You mean like our partner districts?
Yeah, or Whitefish, Columbia Falls.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's experiencing growth. You know, Whitefish just recently built a new high school, renovated. They have a new elementary school that, serves 700 kids, and that's K-4. Yeah, in West Valley, we've just seen, add-on after add-on out there. When they get to 1,000 students, and they're, I think, right around 800 right now, but when they get to 1,000, then they're eligible to build a high school. It's quite a process, and whether or not the West Valley community will support a high school 3 miles down the road from Glacier High School remains to be seen. But that would be a discussion with their board and their community. But yeah, everybody's feeling the pinch.
With the smaller partner districts, West Valley is a great example of like the biggest elementary or K district. But the other ones, it doesn't take many students for them to hit capacity. So if they're growing at the same rate, they're full. And then, that creates an extra issue for them. And then the follow up with the West Valley issues, there's also a bonding capacity issue that districts have. And when you don't have a lot of business, business in your community, it limits some of your bonding capacities. Whether or not it's even possible to build a high school in that area is another question too.
When you look at the original architectural designs for Glacier, it was placed kind of kittywampus on the site, and the reason for that was for the future, it had to have an extension built, and so the auxiliary gym, fitness center out that way, and here's where that extra pod would be added, is on that end, and then you'd have some kind of reconfiguration back here of, those are art classrooms, music classrooms, and it would come out here. So, the building committee and the architectural firm, folks that helped design Glacier really had a long-term vision in place, and it will make it much easier for future boards to make decisions in the future on what they need to do if and when they need to up the capacity of that facility.
So I have a question about that. Was it designed to also go up? Are there some of those areas where we could add another floor? Wasn't designed that way, just to go out.
And, well, the reason for that is on top, the second floor looks just pretty much like the first floor, but on the second floor are the penthouses. So the mechanical systems are all on the second, above on the second floor.
Callie would like to clarify that the penthouse is where the mechanical rooms are on top of the building. And the pool's in the basement, right?
I thought that was at Flathead.
It is there too, yeah.
I thought the pool was where the, wood gets burned.
We did have a major leak there and had a temporary swimming pool there at one point.
Would Glacier look towards the leadership of Flathead and get some
No.
It seemed to work out for a couple decades.
Or 100 years.
Well, there was an interesting, the numbers don't tell the whole story either, because it shows Glacier has capacity for another 150 kids. But if you go back to that map, it's got one kitchen, so culinary is at capacity, and we're saying no to culinary kids. Woodshop, we have one woodshop's full, woodshop's at capacity, we're saying no to kids, you gotta delay taking your wood. Art rooms are at capacity, so there's places within Glacier that are already working at capacity, and we're saying, like that health example, you've got to take this later or not at all, because there isn't another place to put another art class. You know, so there's areas of Glacier that are already functioning at full capacity, and there's not another room for that place to go.
And even structurally, to add on to that, so art, music, science, vocational opportunities, they're literally at capacity. Did you cram some more kids in? Yes. But, you know, Glacier has 66 classrooms for over 110 staff. So when you, so like literally the jigsaw puzzle every year, and I experienced it for 11, and Alan's getting to live the dream now, is how do you schedule every teacher into a room? And, you know, so there's 7 science labs and there's 10 science teachers. So you've got to figure out how you're going to get everybody in their content area. Chemistry is not the same as biology, and they have different lab setups and requirements. So all of those things kind of start to play into that big picture around capacity.
An ongoing joke this year with the science department, how do you know a science teacher at Glacier High School? They're the ones pushing carts in the hallways between classes. They're moving their carts to the next place they're teaching. Our department leader is teaching in 4 different classrooms this year. Because he kind of took it for the team and said, I'm going to be the one that moves so my younger teachers can stay in one spot. But it's pretty funny seeing him run with his cart between bio and anatomy and phys.
You know, last year when we took the tour of Glacier, my eyes were open to the fact that there are not enough classrooms there, and that limits the opportunities for the students, which is not a good thing. And so I think this is really an important thing we have to take a look at, you know, because this affects the kids' education. So, yeah, important issue.
Last question.
Oh, go ahead, Ursula.
Well, so what you were just saying actually is like exactly my question, but it was for Flathead. Is Flathead able to have its offerings open, or are we at capacity for certain electives and things like that at Flathead? Or is it like more doing what it should?
I would say that they're probably in a similar space. You know, so for example, there are no class size limits on a choir class. So they might have 60 girls in beginning women's choir. And so you take 60 students with 1 adult, and what does that look like? And, you know, so some of those spaces are definitely coveted. So by the time you offer orchestra, band, choir, and you only have 2 rooms, but you've got 3 teachers, and add guitar in there, you know, or a music theory, or some of the other elective offerings, and just having a space to be able to have those is really challenging.
And do we have are there any options? Is that is that a part of something we also need to talk about for growth? Is if Flathead's not all the way at capacity, if it went bigger, would we need more of some things than others, or is Flathead kind of doing what it's doing?
You know, that I would defer to Michelle if she was here right now. You know, Flathead has over 100 classrooms. You know, they're 140 students bigger than Glacier High School, but they have some capacity. If they were in a position like Glacier High School's in, with 40 teachers traveling between rooms every day, you know, they could probably handle more.
Okay.
But I don't know, with the recent redesign and renovations, what they would classify the new capacity for Flathead High School as.
I'd defer to Brad. So Brad Holloway did the master schedule at Flathead for 2 years. And my understanding is, Brad, they did not have traveling teachers. Is that correct?
That is, Callie, for the most part. There's, I think, maybe 3 classrooms that are being shared, and some of that is because there's some part-time staff, you know, coming from Linderman and then the afternoon, those sorts of things. The capacity is in things like culinary, where there's 1 space. But their capacity for having open classrooms and periods where you can do things is greater right now. You know, specialty classrooms, I think, are the biggest challenge. You know, where you have woods and science and things like that, whereas I want to say a general classroom has a lot more flexibility for math and social studies, foreign language, some of those things.
class at Flathead is culinary. There's not a lot of shared classrooms.
Okay, great.
I do have one more kind of question. If West Valley hits, I had never heard this, you know, like, this is new. If West Valley hits, did you say 1,000 students, it could build a high school? And what, like, division would that high school become?
It would most likely be a Class A size high school,
Class A.
so, 400 to 800 students. Yeah, so right now, they're probably averaging between 80 and 100 students per grade level. So if you think about, 100 eighth graders coming into Glacier High School, or 100 eighth graders going into a new high school, you'd be about 100 students per grade level.
Is that similar to Columbia Falls?
Yeah, Columbia Falls and Whitefish are bigger. They're in that 600 to 800.
Okay, but like Big Fork then?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
So if West Valley builds a high school, would that be pulling kids out of Glacier?
It would,
So some of these issues would then be resolved for a while?
potentially, yep. And you've seen that in some of our larger communities. So Helena, East Helena built a Class A size high school, and they've been adding about 100 students to it each year for the last 3 years. Lockwood did something very similar in Billings. So we have seen that happen in some of those communities. And the resulting effect would be, one of the high schools in Helena sees a decrease of about 100 students. So as you're talking about capacities and funding formulas and different things, that those have an impact.
But it only buys you a few years, and then you're gonna be at capacity.
Yeah,
Well, maybe not if you're like, because Kalispell proper doesn't really have the growth rate that the outer areas have.
yeah, I don't know the answer to that question well. But I think, if you, looking at some of the enrollment projections that we had the statisticians do from FECC, you see these areas in certain grade levels where there's some big spikes, and then other ones where they stay relatively flat. And so, trying to just assess a 1% growth rate overall, from K-12, looks a little bit different. And I would also, one other piece I would add, is that we've added early kindergarten into the mix. So we added 2 more early kindergarten classrooms this year, so we have another 34 students that otherwise we wouldn't have had at the elementary level.
Jack?
With Lockwood and, East Helena, at one time, they required legislative approval to have those high schools. Is that still the case?
Yes, yep, you have to hit a certain number in order to be able to.
Well, they had to request the legislature to get approval. So I
Yes.
assume that's still in place.
Yes.
And then, Lockwood and East Helena had their own identities, and they're trying to foster their own identities. Maybe West Valley will want to do that too, but it doesn't seem to be as prevalent as East Helena and Lockwood.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when you think about schools and being the hub of a community, there isn't like a big business district in West Valley, or anything like that. So hard to project or try and make determinations on what may or may not happen, over the long haul. And just, I don't have a crystal ball on that one.
Yeah.
The next slide, just to kind of get your mind thinking and wrapped around this. So we've talked about elementary, we've talked about middle school, we've talked about high school enrollments, and then the next question is, well, what do we have in place? And we built Rankin a few years ago, and the open field that you see just below the parking lot there was actually, that whole site was conceived and designed to incorporate a middle school onto that property. It's not big enough for a high school in terms of the acreage that you need for activity fields and all the other things that go with that. And that parking lot that you see, I'm just going to refer to it as the south, on the south side of that image, was built for accommodating another school next to it. So we have that property. We also have a 12-acre parcel up by the Ford dealership. Ford dealership's on the left, so that is Rose Crossing and Whitefish Stage. Whitefish Stage is the red line on the far right. And that 12 acres is about the size that you would want to have for an elementary school. But that is at the northernmost reaches of our school district. And so we have that as a possibility. And then we talked a little bit about Glacier High School and the ability to add on to that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Kelly. And so the areas, the grass areas, the one that's on the bottom right corner where Kelly's cursor is, that's where the band currently practices, the marching band. But you can see there's some other open green space, so we would make sure that they still had an area to practice. But my understanding was when the building was designed, the utilities and everything was there to be able to connect to that building and add another pod to it. So probably the bigger challenge would be that art and music area and being able to expand that. But so those are options, you know, and people ask, well, so what's the best option? What's the solution? And, you know, in my mind, I think if we're being proactive as a board, we're having these conversations now, looking at our enrollments and looking at our projections and facility capacity and saying, okay, do we need to be or want to be in a position where we're shovel ready, meaning that we've done all the legwork, we've done the design work, we've done everything to accommodate building a structure in the future. So options might include, well, let's add on to Glacier High School, let's build a second middle school, and let's build another elementary school. There's three, that's one option, we do all three. Another option might be we build another middle school, and we build it large enough to handle fifth grade, which would alleviate crowding in our elementary. So, and you get more money for fifth graders in a middle school concept. Evergreen, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, they all have fifth grade in their middle schools. So potentially killing two birds with one stone if you consider that type of option. And that really addresses elementary, K-8, but it doesn't address the high school side of things. And then you also have a very large middle school, right? So currently it houses 1,100 kids. So what do you do with that space if you move some students out to create a second middle school? And is it, you know, are you dividing that population in half and adding fifth grade to it? But I think there's just lots of options and things that we can think about creatively. But I just wanted to put that in front of the board to be considering, because I think one of the next steps once we're through our strategic planning process will be to engage in a long-range facility planning process. And of course, we have our transportation maintenance and operations location and building, and we're continuing to move forward with that. We'll have some preliminary budget numbers from Martel to look at on October 19th and have some more discussions around that. So it's a big topic.
You know, one thing I was just thinking about as you're talking about this, and it wouldn't alleviate, you know, the crowding much, but utilizing like work-based learning, especially for juniors and seniors, where they would be outside of the school, you know, getting credit for graduation, I think is something that we definitely could make use of. I think our community's screaming for things like that, but, you know, it just would alleviate some of the crowding, but.
Yeah, I think, you know, even when you talk about that, we toured the Bow Ag Center today. We have 400 students that go out to the Bow Ag Center every day, which helps alleviate some of that pressure. You know, but even as they talked, you know, capacity for the Bow Ag Center and what does that look like into the future, becomes part of that conversation. But yeah, you know, and there's other options. We could go to shifts. There was a time in Flathead High School's history where kids came in shifts. You had a morning session and an afternoon session. And, you know, those aren't the pleasant things to think about, but they might be things that we have to consider as well. So thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I
I have a
just,
question.
wanted to say,
Here's Rebecca. Rebecca, go ahead.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut somebody off. I have a lag here. Micah, what about the options of building out KMS? Does KMS have space around it, or do you feel that's impossible?
Oh, I think everything's possible. You know, one of the things that we talk about, you know, in terms of the size of our high schools right now, is they're a nice size, right? So the quality of the high school experience when you get into the 2,000 student range and the, you know, and even bigger, and you look at that middle school being at 1,100 students, and, you know, at what point do we need to add another administrator or counselor, you know, even to accommodate what we can. We could certainly build it bigger, but it is the largest middle school in the state, by far.
Kelly?
I just wanted to thank a member of the technology department. Kyra was instrumental in pulling a lot of numbers out of Power School, and that isn't easy. We were asking her to dig deep on where people were coming from and where they were going to and all that, and it's not really easy to do, and I just, it was fun. Micah, Matt, and I had a good time putting everything together in a PowerPoint, but the workhorse behind the scenes was Kyra, and I wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay, any other questions? Let's move on. Human resources and personnel.
I'm Tracy tonight. And the attachment is our typical hires, resignations, terminations, and I believe, Kelly, you want to pull that up? And we're asking you to approve those actions.
Lance?
Mike, I see there's a pretty big name on there, Mr. Richard Lawrence. What's the kind of the plan for hiring that position?
Well, I just got the news on Thursday, and we haven't talked about it yet as a central office team, but we'll put together a hiring process and work through that as we typically would for our administrative positions.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. There's no way we could convince him to stay through the year or anything.
You know, he told me, you know, so last year he announced that he was going to retire, and then he told me I'm coming back for one more year, and then he came and said, you know, I think I'm going to be out of here on December 31st, and I'm excited for him and happy. I don't think I would try and convince him to try and stay longer, but yeah, he'll be missed.
Yeah.
So
Sue, could I make a motion to approve the new hires, resignations, retirees, terminations, and change in contract as presented?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. I don't see any public comment here unless Hillary wants to say something. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, and best of luck to Richard. Contracts. Now you're Sarah Cole.
I am Sarah Cole as well. And this is a contract, there's no financial implication, but basically it is a agreement to allow a speech language pathologist to, for lack of a better term, student teach with our district. And that's a field that we're always looking for qualified candidates for. Interestingly enough, the university that this is partnering with is the one that Dr. Poland works at, Nova University. So we're just asking for approval for that.
So, Micah, this university's like in Florida. How did we all the way up here end up with this position?
With the speech language pathologist. This is a private university, and they're just looking for placements, and so they're trying to place, their professionals in various locations throughout the country.
They just go wherever.
Yes.
And do we do the renting part for this, or who handles the housing?
They do. Yep.
Any other questions? Someone like to make a motion?
I will do. I move we approve this, agreement as presented.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Kim. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the contract. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Thank you. It's been approved unanimously. Next up, construction contracts and change orders.
Grade 2 or?
I could be Greg as well. Fill in for anybody. So this is a, contract to, work on the, survey, of lot 3 and 4. These costs we will incur, will be invoiced for them initially, and then when we close, if we close with DCP, they will actually, pay those expenses and the closing costs, since this was initiated by them. So we just need a project, we have to give Morrison and Merrill a project directive, and then they'll complete it and move it forward.
So I move that we, what are we doing here? Approve Morrison Merrily Project Directive 2021.3 as presented.
Thank you, Will. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ursula. It has been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Thank you. It has been approved unanimously. Next up, strategic planning. Now you get to be yourself.
I'm gonna be Greg. So, what's in front of you tonight is a contract for services with, Darlene Schottel, to facilitate strategic planning along with her resume. I don't know if I need to go into all the details, but this is, we talked at the last board meeting, gave a little presentation on what it is, what it isn't, and then this basically summarizes, what Darlene would be doing with our district. She is planning, if this is approved tonight, she's planning on being here on the, at the board work session. That is not included in her fee, and to work with the board, for possibly up to 2 hours, working through this process, setting some timelines, getting some, information from the board and guiding us through, the process.
So
I
on the
just want to make a note that with Darlene being here on that day and adding 2 hours, that would be an extremely long meeting for us, okay? We could talk to Darlene to see if she wanted to do her presentation like the next day, just so we don't have such a long meeting. I mean, because we really don't know what's going to be on the agenda just yet. So thoughts, comments, do you prefer one long session or 2 shorter sessions? Any preference?
You know,
Lance?
too, what I'd say is usually after 8 o'clock, my schedule's wide open.
I was gonna say my attention.
Yeah, my attention's very open.
What I thought.
The other thing we could do is, we've had our, board work study topics laid out for the year, and we could push something back, and free up some space in the agenda for that. So
And this
maybe
is-
it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm open to either. I'm a night person, I can work with it, but I know people fatigue. I don't know
Yeah.
if people can start a little earlier. I know people have work. I don't know about, maybe starting at 5, if people could make that work, but I'm pretty much open to whatever.
If she agreed to up to 2 hours, it doesn't mean we have to
Correct, but she's got it pretty lined out, 15 minutes doing this, 15 minutes doing that. But, yeah, it all depends. If Jack does all the talking, then we're here for 2 hours.
That's not fair. He's been quiet.
3.5 hour work session. Darlene leaving after 2, okay.
But, so what I'm hearing is, keep it all in the one night, move the work study topic, and possibly starting at 5. I'll talk with Darlene and see what she can figure out.
Yeah, bring snacks.
And we can bring snacks, yes.
I like that.
Okay, if that sounds reasonable.
Oh, I did not yet. I asked nicely.
So this is an action item, right? We're approving the contract.
On the schedule, it said there were things happening in September and early October. Are these being pushed, or how's that working?
Yes, we are, adjusting, we'll work with Darlene to adjust and make a schedule that works for our district. She just wanted to give some preliminary, flesh to what that process would look like and how long it would take. So, yeah, all of those are just, placeholders for now.
Other questions? Scott?
I don't have a question, but I'm excited we're moving in this direction.
Mhm.
I know Darlene, I know that she'll do a good job for this, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the strategic planning contract as presented.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second? Kim, thank you.
I beat Diane. You beat me.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the contract, move forward with strategic planning process. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rebecca? Rebecca? Are you there, Rebecca? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, well, it's been approved, 10 to question mark. Okay, thank you. I'm excited about this process. You know that. Policy updates, first reading. Micah?
Yes, we have a whole slew of new policies to consider. On the bright side, if you'll notice, there's actually one being recommended for deletion at the very bottom. That is
Out of all those.
the copyright compliance, which is basically verbatim repetition of what's in the law. And so having a policy that basically is just regurgitating that just seems, I think, excessive. With these policies, we talked about them in policy committee. One of them that I want to draw your attention to specifically is 5140, which is classified employment and assignments. It's a required update for a recommended policy, and we currently have a policy. We have that policy. It had some pretty significant changes, and so as we talked about it in policy committee, a lot of the things that are in that are what are covered within a CBA, and then there were some things that weren't necessarily covered in the CBA. So talked with Tracy Scott and tried to get a better understanding of what maybe some options would be for our board if we move forward with adopting this policy. So one option would be to adopt it as is, which means then we have to go back and negotiate some of those terms in the collective bargaining agreement with the classified employees. Most of this stuff is already contained in there, and so another option would be to adopt the language as modified. So Tracy took what was in there and modified it basically to reflect what's in the CBAs, and which is certainly an option. And then the third option would be to not adopt it at all. In fact, we would actually delete the policy and just go with what we have in the CBAs, because those can change year to year. And so just wanted to put that in front. This is first reading, but wanted to put that in front of the board. And if you had any thoughts, one way or another on how this could look, we're open to whatever feedback you have.
Which number was that again?
5140.
Okay, so look at that one again. I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is exactly how MTSBA wrote this.
Okay.
And a lot of it has to do with probationary periods,
Mhm.
and how long they can be extended, but those are things that they're already negotiated and in the contract. We have probationary periods in place, we have extensions, outlined in the language, things like that, so.
Hey, Mike, if we were to keep this as is and have the CBA, you're saying that we would have to renegotiate the CBA because it would be out of whack with
the policy.
Mhm.
So if there's like you have to choose between the policy or the CBA legally, which one takes precedence?
The CBA. So when I first presented this to Tracy, and asked her for her thoughts and input, she sent it back and said, we don't need this policy. And I said, well, we already have it. So if you're saying we don't need it, you know, that is an option, is to just eliminate the policy altogether.
Okay.
Any other policies you want to point out, Micah, on the first reading? Okay, Ursula, question?
So I had a question. Typically, when I read through the updates, you know, there's the part that's erased or scratched out and the part that's put in there, and I can kind of get it, but I don't always know exactly what it'll look like. On the board policy procedures, there was a place that I was just wondering, you know, like, what does it look like now that it's different? And so, you know, I remember what it says. Basically, it was saying that the way it used to say is that the board chair could change around the order that things in the agenda went, and it gets crossed out. It's not that one. It wasn't that one, because that one got crossed out, and then there was more in there, but there was another one where it just got crossed out. Maybe the one above it? Or, yeah, maybe the one. No. It was towards the beginning, but it just crossed it out. It just took it out. And so I was just wondering, because I'm not on the policy committee, if something like that is taken out, does it mean that it can't be done anymore, or it was just decided that it's not necessary to be in the policy?
Well, I think what you're referring to so they might have updated one of these policies, crossed something out and put some new language in, and then if you adopt that policy to be consistent with another policy where something like that is referenced, they would cross that out. So when you're looking at adopting these, you have, on the one hand, you have some language that was eliminated, some new language may be added, but that language didn't exist in the other one, and so they would just cross out a reference to that.
Right, and that's what I typically see, but in this case, it looks like it was just taken out. So if it's something is just, I mean, even with like the ones that are being deleted, if it's just taken out, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, like that it can't be done. It just means that it was decided it doesn't need to be in policy.
Yeah.
Okay. Will you look at the 142R, just really quick? I felt like that was where it was, but maybe that's not. It was one of those that a little farther down, maybe.
That's 1420.
Yeah, that's not it. A little farther. This might be a long one.
Well, 1420 was the only one that dealt with
Yeah.
board procedures.
Yeah.
And all that
I
did was-
think it was on the second page, Callie, or something was.
The impact of
I just read it today, but
The
I'm
impact
not
of
saying that.
1420 is the same. I don't know why they thought it needed to be reworded.
Oh, it's right there on line
Right.
27 and
With
28.
consent of a majority of members present, the order of business at any meeting may be changed.
It's okay. It's fine. It was mostly just for me to like try to be a better board member, so.
Jack, did you have a comment?
Yeah,
Yeah, that part right there. With the consent of a majority of members present, the order of business at any meeting may be changed. So that's something we've done recently.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just crossed out. So now is that not allowed? Or it is still allowed, it's just not in there?
Yeah, it's still allowed.
Okay, but it was decided it didn't need to be written. Is that would,
That would be what MTSBA.
MTSBA advised that it didn't
Yeah,
need to be
so
written?
all of these are coming through MTSBA, so
Okay.
they have policy reviews, and more often than not, what ends up happening is there's a change in the law or administrative rules, those things that they reference, at the end of each policy. And so that would provide for that legal opinion or update to that policy.
So if it couldn't be done, it would say it there. Like typically if a policy changes, not just from we're taking it out, but that you can't do it, that it would say it in there? Typically, or it's all kind of different, one by one?
You know, Ursula, this was just a topic that came up at the think tank session,
Mm-hmm.
I think just last week. And the explanation for it has to do with the open meeting laws.
Mm-hmm.
If you change the order of your agenda, the public may not be aware of it
Mm-hmm.
and will not have the opportunity to comment.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of had a little caution on it. I think it's still part of Robert's rules, but it was a big caution, and I'm sure that's why they took that.
Okay,
Out
so
of
in
there.
Robert's rules, you can change it, but MTSBA is kind of worried about it.
Yes.
Okay,
Jack, did you?
No, you answered it.
okay.
Yay, one for me.
That helps. I felt like I learned something. That's good.
So if there are any other questions about, first reading on any of these, let us know. If you have an opinion one way or another on, which one was it? 5140, let me know.
Okay, policy update, second reading. Take it away, Micah.
Well, there's only 4, and we talked about these at the last meeting.
Yeah.
so-
Any questions on these?
No changes from last time.
No.
Okay, so next time on the agenda?
We did late, was that the second? I can't remember if it was second policy or second reading or third reading. We linked the ones that Jack requested to be linked.
Yes, we referenced those.
Cross-reference them.
Do you remember that, Jack?
Not anymore, no. I'm on those things.
We did do that. And then we have
Remembering though.
we have a third and final reading of a series of policies. Feel good about where we're at with all of them except for one, and we'd like to table it for now. And that is the air quality restrictions and outdoor activities, practice, and competition. If you remember, the DEQ kind of changed some of their rules, and so MTSBA created a policy around that. And we, under the advice of the DEQ, installed some purple air machines that read ambient air quality. And then we had the day that was relatively smoky, and I looked on Purple Air. It's a website you can go to, anybody can go to it, and you can see air quality indicators. Across the valley, there's one installed on the health department, and the numbers were in the 120s to 150s parts per million, and the air monitoring station at Columbia Falls had it at 6 parts per million. So they were in the green and we were in the red.
Oh, no.
And so then I sent an email to DEQ, said, can you help me understand what's going on here? And then they sent me back like a dissertation with formulas and stuff that I don't understand. So I gave it to Matt. And Matt said, well, let's table this for now. Air quality is pretty good, and we have a little bit of time. We just want to do a little more investigating and research before we put something specifically into place that may not be in our best interest. Sorry, Matt, I threw you under the bus on that one. That's exactly what happened.
Rebecca, go ahead.
I can be heard. Sorry, I've been glitching all night. I had two questions on 3233. It says employees or agents of the school district are present only in capacity outside of their official duties. And I guess I was concerned because there's a automatic power differential between, you know, a teacher and a student. I wondered if we should reword it to say something like employees present will make it clear they're there outside of their official duties.
Do you have a line reference?
Yeah, that's it. It's moving.
Number 21.
Guideline 4. It says employees
bullet
or agents are present only in capacity, and I thought that it was important also that they told the group that they were there, you know, and not as officials in some way, that they identified themselves as, you know, merely there for their own personal gain or whatever, or their own personal interests.
So they don't come across as authority figures? Is that why?
Yeah. Thoughts? Questions? Anybody else?
I guess my feeling on Rebecca's point is that I'd hate to put us into a position where our employee did not clearly, and what does clearly mean?
Yeah.
And so I like to keep the policies kind of broad and open as it is.
Thank you, Lance. Anything else? Jack?
Yes, you did correct the firearms and non-firearm definitions. You have the same in both policies. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if nobody else feels that that's important, my other issue was on 3510. It talks about MHSA activities, and not all activities are MHSA. We're going back to firearms. Never mind. 3510? Yeah. I guess it's lower. It talks about lower down. It talks about MHSA guideline. Yeah, there it is. 3A. Are established by MHSA rules, and not all extracurricular activities are MHSA activities. So I wondered if we needed to say that non-MHSA activities are also under the general rules of MHSA.
And I think we typically clarify that in our student handbooks and activity handbooks, differentiating between what is an MHSA-sponsored activity and what would be considered a school club activity organization. I think this is just clearly to explain that the school district doesn't make the rules around MHSA-sponsored activities. So they want to be very clear. We want to be very clear as a district. So if someone, you know, wanted to contest the transfer rule or a recruiting rule or something like that, those are not school district rules. Those are done by a different authority or board.
I see. I was misreading it. Thank you.
No, that's okay.
Good points, Rebecca. Any other comments, questions? There's a lot of policies there. Third reading, action item. Anybody comfortable making the motion?
So I'd like to make the motion to approve the policy updates and third and final readings, except for the 8130, which we'll table.
Okay, thank you, Lance.
Second.
Is there a second? Will, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve these policies on third reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Thank you. It's been approved unanimously. Let's move on to the consent agenda on the elementary side. Micah, any discussion, comments?
Not for me. This is just the approval of, the elementary tuition. There's a list of students on that.
which is a standard thing that we
Yes.
do every time. Is there an elementary trustee that is comfortable with the motion?
I'll do that. I'll go ahead and approve the consent agenda, elementary as presented.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. Elementary trustees, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. It has been approved unanimously. The consent agenda district-wide. Micah, anything on this one?
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay. Anybody comfortable making the motion?
I move we approve the, district-wide consent agenda.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Rebecca?
Aye.
Thank you. It's been moved unanimously. It's been approved unanimously, excuse me. Number 10, safe return to schools and continuity of service. You're doing a lot of talking today, Micah.
I sure am. Glad you guys enjoy listening. Just wanted to brief the board on where we're at, with our current case counts. Actually, as of today, we have 21 active and 126, overall. And you can see, where those are broken out by school, both for staff and students. Any questions on any of those?
How are the subs? What's the situation with substitutes? As you're talking about, COVID cases.
Substitutes continue to be a challenge for us, across all departments.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have some things that we're working on.
right.
We talked about it at Personnel Committee. We're bringing some things forward to finance and the full board here in the near
Okay.
future.
Just had to ask that along
Yep.
with COVID numbers. Okay.
Mark?
I just want to know if there's a peak yet.
No, in fact, the information I got today from Brittany Coburn is with Logan Health. The positivity rate last week was 18.5%, and it was 21.5% today. So, you know, I think some of the predictions were that with the Delta variant, you were going to see it spike really quickly and then drop back off. We've seen just this continual increase, a little ebb and flow to it, but we've been holding out for a long time right around that 20% positivity rate.
Micah? So, have we been worried about this, in terms of staffing or keeping our buildings open or classes open?
Yeah, and I'll get it, there's a couple more, well, at least another slide, I want to show you guys what our attendance looks like. Yeah, I think the challenge that we know exists is that, what we report for actual confirmed cases through the county, doesn't really reflect, what we're seeing attendance-wise, with students.
So we have students that aren't showing up for school, but they're not classed as a COVID case?
Correct. So if they do a home test, through Walgreens or something like that, like parents will call us and say, you know, my child's tested positive for COVID.
Oh, okay.
They can let the county know, but the county can't even act on that. So it has to be through a lab confirmed, test. So people are doing the right thing and saying, you know, my child has COVID, I'll keep them home, I'll do the right thing and isolate them until, that 10 days is over, and we just go from there.
Is that same for staff, or do you have more information from the staff?
I would not say that is the same for staff. I think, staff are getting tested, and are out with their positive cases and, yep. Kelly, can you go back to that other, yeah, And this was just something that we talked about today. And, you know, the data that I'm looking at right now is that, you know, as an example, you think Glacier High School, Flathead High School, pretty similar in size. Flathead High School's had 25 cases year to date, and Glacier has had 4. Anecdotally, what I'm hearing is we've got lots of kids out, they're testing positive, and or just staying home when they're sick. And so, you know, as we look through these numbers and try and determine what's happening, or if there's an outbreak in a particular school or something like that going on, it's really hard to determine. But I think from you know, the idea that we're gonna keep our doors open and keep kids in school, that part, I feel good about. It's just that sub piece is getting really challenging. Gwen, I think you said we had 46 subs that went through payroll this last month. Is that right? 68. And we could probably pull data and show you, and we get a daily report from Tracy, and, you know, we'll see, you know, 85% of the positions filled. Some days we get 96% of them filled. So what you have are building administrators who are subbing, you're pulling paras from whatever their responsibilities were to substitute. You just see a lot of people covering for other people to try and make it work. So, and Callie, do you want to pull up that average daily attendance? Yes. And again, all credit to Kyra. As I said, Kyra, I really want to get this information. So these are the percentages by week of the average daily attendance by school. So you can see Edgerton, you know, at the beginning of the year, 95.4%, which is where you typically want to be. You want to be in that 95% range. And then you see some of these schools, Flathead High School, September 20th through the 24th was about 85%. You know, so if you're factoring 10% of 1,500 kids, that's 150 kids out of your building. And that was the average for the week. So they could have a day where they had 92% one day and 78% the next. So there's just a huge ebb and flow on that. But, you know, overall, you know, hovering in that low 90s to high 80s percentage. But, you know, from a goal perspective, we would always want to see about 95%. And some of that is illness, some of that is vacations. We're going to see hunting season coming up. You know, there's just going to be a lot of things that play into that. What that doesn't include are kids that are out for activities. Those don't count against that average daily attendance. So if you start throwing activities into the mix, suddenly you're feeling, you know, it feels like a lot of kids are gone when there's activities that are going on as well.
Micah,
Yeah.
can you remind us what was you had a number, and I can't remember, it was discussed whether it should be 15 or 20% of students missing was kind of like that number that you were looking at where action would be taken. Did you decide on 15 or 20?
20?
You decided
No.
on 20. And
No, we did, yeah. That was part of the
The health
discussion.
department was saying maybe 15, and you were thinking maybe 20, is that
Yeah,
right?
because, you know, so if you say on a typical school year, average day, if you're 5 to 7% of your students are out, that would be what's expected. And that could be for a variety of things, right? I've got an orthodontist appointment, I've got a cold or things like that, other things going on. So there's always kind of that number, and then what do you attach to the rest of it, and drilling down into specifically why each one of those students was gone. At the elementary level, we're seeing, you know, quarantines, which are affecting that average daily attendance. So if you have a class and maybe there were 2 or 3 positive cases and the whole class ends up quarantined, you know, that represents a pretty big chunk, but for a very short period of time as well. So.
So the only one that almost came to the 20% was the LEC. Does the LEC typically have, I mean, I see at the beginning of the year, everybody was there, but do they typically have a little bit lower, like, daily
I think those numbers look great for the LEC.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And Jody would want me to say that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that is all I had, under that section. Want to talk a little bit about, under the plan, for safe return to schools and continuity of service plan. And I'm actually going to kick it over to, Matt. We started on Monday, offering our testing clinics. And Matt has some information to share. It's been, it seemed like it was a lot harder to get these things up and going and off the ground than it should have been. But Matt has done an amazing job doing all the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively. Lots of boxes. So Matt, you want to just share with the board?
Yeah, so, it's been a really good team effort. I appreciate the, positive comments from Michael, but this is his idea, and he's, corralled a lot of the superintendents in the Flathead Valley and built some spreadsheets and had numerous Excel lessons for me in the process. But, in big picture, working with the state and Gene Forte's office with this grant, with combined efforts, we got it going yesterday was the first day. And so there's a lot of little details here on getting 2 remote sites going and then 1 site at the fairgrounds. Then getting that staff, getting tests, getting people trained to administer the tests. Then yesterday morning at Snappy's, just one of our sites, we had 27 tests where people show up to get tested at that site. 7 of them were positive. And then today we did another count halfway through the day, and we ended up with, we had 78 total. People have been tested, students and parents, and 16 were positive. The big thing that I would want you guys to take away is we're going to see a spike in the numbers, and I don't want that to be misrepresentation of an increase of actual COVID. At one of our elementary schools last week, we had 12 parents confirmed through a home test that their kids were positive. We had 10 additional students that were lab confirmed through the county. So we actually had 22 students in that building that were COVID positive, but we only reported 10, or 10 of them were reported. Now, with the testing sites available, the rapid testing sites available, likely the vast majority of those kids would have showed up as lab confirmed. So it would have been a 22 number if we had had this going. It doesn't change the actual reality of what's happening in our schools. It just allows us to respond a little bit better. One of the things that was encouraging, or has been encouraging in the last just 24 hours, is the amount of parents that are coming in and getting tested. So we're opening this up to students and their parents. And we had, I think only 6 of the 16 were students, and the rest of them were parents. And so that's getting upstream of this problem a little bit. And so if those parents can keep their kids home while the parents are sick, then that keeps one of those 6 students from spreading it in a classroom. And in the elementary school, we have been seeing classroom to classroom spread this year, which has been frustrating, for the staff, and it's been frustrating for the kids. We're taking a pretty practical approach to quarantine, so the numbers are a little bit smaller on how many kids get pulled out, but we have been seeing, more classroom spread. So we're hoping this works. It's really nice to have some money to be able to do it from the state, and it's nice to have all the supplies just be done. Jackie Fuller will be kind of leading the charge with some of our efforts, and I am so glad to be handing that baton to her today and tomorrow. But I'm open to questions about it. I think it's a really good deal. Appreciate you guys spreading the word if you can. 7 to 11 in the morning at Snappy's, and we're going to start with across the street from Stable Coffee and Frugals, because if you stay in the Kidsport complex, people don't understand what you're talking about, because Kidsport is associated with the other side of the parking lot, but it is actually on the Kidsport property on the north side of that lot. And then we are all day from 10 to 4 at the fairgrounds. And then we're back at those 2 east and west sites from 4 to 7 at night. So our big picture idea is we want to get parents, when they're trying to get to work or to school, and then when they're coming home from school, and just make it super convenient for them so they can make real-time decisions on what's best for their family.
And that's the update.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I have a
All
question.
right. Oh, Rebecca?
I'm excited that we're offering the free testing because hopefully that will give our numbers better. People, rather than testing at home, will test there, so we'll know a little more. So that's great. Good job, guys. But I wanted to make sure that how is our messaging on quarantines and what to do? How proactive are we on making sure that we make both the district policies and the health department policies and those policies match on you have a positive case, this is what you're supposed to do with you, this is what you're supposed to do with your kids. Just kind of overall, how are we doing with that? And my second question actually is, are we staffing these? Are we losing, people who could be substitutes to staff these COVID testing sites?
Really good questions. I'll start in reverse order. I don't think that we're losing any substitutes. The people that are signing up, especially after school, have been a lot of our employees, and they've been appreciative of the opportunity. We're paying $25 an hour through the grant. And so some of our staff currently don't make that during their day job, and they're happy to take that. And then the people that are staffing it during the day are some retired teachers. If anything, I think it's given me an opportunity to put a plug in that it might just be time to come back and dust off some of those elementary teaching skills and get back to the class and some way. They call it community service or dust up, whatever you want to call it. And then the school is separate from the quarantine this year. That has to do with the legislation that went through. The vast majority of parents are pretty surprised when they learn that kids over the age of 12 aren't required to quarantine. And that's been the feedback, at least, within the last 24 hours, is when you're talking to them and they have a family that's confirmed positive, and then you say, well, if your child is less than 12, they need to quarantine. If they're older than 12, they don't need to. A parent's like, why? That doesn't make any sense. And I say, I agree, but it's the way it is. And then we encourage them to talk to the county. The county guides that quarantine process. We just comply and try to be as helpful as we can in passing information back and forth.
And I think, as people are manning these testing sites, we have the literature, the same stuff that Logan Health uses with their testing sites. So we're communicating the exact same message as the health department or Logan Health, but we don't have an opportunity to have a lot of say, and so we just continually redirect people back to the health department for some of those questions.
Thanks, guys. Excellent answers.
Ursula?
I'll just kind of jump on what Rebecca said and just put it out there, because I recently had COVID, and it was a little bit hard to figure out what to do, and with my kids, what to do, and the county kind of didn't have time to help me. So just to kind of put it out there, I don't know if there's one other place, if it's on the website or whatever, easy links to the most pertinent information, because not everything is clear, and, different advice if you are or aren't vaccinated and all of that. And I am hearing that a little from the community, like, what do I do now? And the county didn't know, people were like, try this person, they'll call you back, and nobody did. So just kind of putting it out there that I think that what to do question is maybe not super easy to answer.
Good point, Ursula. Anything else?
I will just say too that I had to go get tested yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel good over the weekend and thought I'd just run down to one of our little sites yesterday and check it out. And it was slick and snot. No pun intended. I just pulled up in my car and these lovely ladies came out, gave me my form to fill out, gave me my little swab. I swished it around and I sat in my car and listened to the podcast. They came out and told me I was clear. So time to get it going, 'cause,
Summer and snow.
I think it should be a pun. I mean, some pun intended, right?
So we can give advice or direction from the county, we point them to, but one of the easy talking points is we just say, remember these three numbers, 10, 8, and 5. So if you test positive, regardless of your age, you have to isolate for 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just everybody.
Mm-hmm.
If you are under the age of 12, that's where the 8 and 5 come in, and we want this to happen. And that's part of the reason for our testing sites is if you're a close contact, your parent tests positive, you can come back after day 5 and test, and if you test negative, you can return to school on day 8. So, those, usually people don't really care until all of a sudden they have a positive test. You say just 3 numbers. If you're positive, 10 days. If it's a close contact in your household, then you're worried about 8 and 5. You really want to see your kid back in school at day 8, no symptoms, and a negative test. And now we actually have tests available, so kids can just show up and take that test.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also say, call the county, and we hope that they call you back.
They
The reality is they're really busy.
They're
and
so busy.
I'm calling them too.
Yeah.
And, so I'm adding to their voicemail list and email file,
Right.
and there's just too many people to get back to.
It's just a lot right now. Yeah.
10, 8, and 5.
I was still symptomatic at 10 days. That was one of my issues. I was like, I'm still pretty sick, but I got a lot to do. I've been isolated a lot of days. It's just hard. It's hard to make those calls. So I waited. I waited 12 days. It was a long 12 days.
Okay. Informational items.
Oh, wait, that sounded different to me. I thought at first you said with a negative test, even you're not supposed to quarantine over the age of 12. And then I thought I just heard with a negative case, but a close contact, you are supposed to quarantine for 5 days. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Under the age of 12, actually, everybody's recommended to quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
There's no enforcement for 12-year-olds and above because of legislation that says you can't discriminate against vaccinated or unvaccinated folks. So it's only under the age of 12 is a mandatory quarantine for 5 days, or for a total of 8 days. But you have to have a negative test at day 5 to be able to return to school or work, or I guess school because you have to be going to work at 11. We haven't started that program yet. So that's the conversation, and I know that I threw that. I said 3 numbers and I threw the age of 12 in there, but I thought I'd sneak that one by everybody, but Rebecca caught it. So yeah, it's 10 days for everybody, and then if you're 12 and younger, worry about that 5 and 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, informational items and reports. I want to start off with our gyroscope award, and if you remember, a gyroscope is used to navigate, to keep you on your path forward. There are 2 parts to a gyroscope. The part that stays steady, that never changes, those are your core values, keeps you upright. The inside of a gyroscope are the things that you can change, and those things have to stay in motion in order to keep you balanced and going forward. And I know Kim has the gyroscope.
Okay, having said all that, I wish I had one for everyone, because I think we're all, I hate this thing. Okay, for me, what you just said, I wish I had one for everyone, because we have all unique perspectives that we bring to the table. So, but for this particular one, and I have given this a lot of thought, I like to give it to a trustee that is, when we have our work sessions or a committee meeting, this trustee brings up some ideas on how to solve it. And so I would like to pass this on, and I've said this to this person already, like pass this on to Mark, because he always thinks outside the box when we come to our problem-solving ideas. So now it's yours.
nomination for both of you. You guys are a great team.
So now, Mark, you have to remember, Beth, you have to remember to send that back with him. Okay? So Mark, why don't you start out with the trustee report? You got anything today?
I'd like to say that I don't have anything.
Thanks, Mark. And let's back up. Lance, got
Had a wonderful tour, by Mr. Brian Bay at the Ag Center today. I think there's quite a few trustees. It's just incredible what, because I didn't make it out there last year due to COVID, but what a change the facility has made, and, money well invested. And just hearing the number of students that are out there participating, I mean, it's amazing what a change it is in the last couple of years. So, yeah, thank you for everyone who's been a part of making that such an amazing educational opportunity.
Scott?
I just want to thank, staff for getting all the information together for the committee meetings that I've been at. It's been amazing, makes the board meetings, so much easier, and run smoother, and the information they provide is just awesome, so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Scott. Will?
I was also on the ag tour, and I just like to confirm what Lance said, that they have an awesome program.
Ursula?
So I had an opportunity to go to another city's homecoming week. And that was interesting for me because I'm from Kalispell and I've only ever seen the way that Kalispell does it. And while I was there, I had a couple of ideas. One of the things that we talk about a lot as the board is how we can connect with the community. And there were just a few things that happened, which, you know, some of them for us to think about, and some I'm going to maybe put in administrators' ears. But it had been mentioned at the beginning that they had the homecoming parade. The board had a float in the homecoming parade. It's kind of cheesy and embarrassing, but it's a way to put ourselves out there and wave to the community. I think it's something we could consider. And they had the elementary schools were invited to have floats at the homecoming parade. And I was thinking that, yeah, inviting the elementary schools, including the partner districts, to be a part of their respective high schools' homecoming parade might be a really good way to connect with them before they come and join the high school. It was kind of cool. They did their reunions, which now I know is actually kind of standard. They did their reunions homecoming week, so they had the alumni there. And just little things like that, where I was thinking, oh, if the alumni were there for homecoming week, then they would see more things that the schools are doing. So just kind of really positive things we could do. You know, we have to talk about hard things so often. I was thinking that some of these light and fun ways to connect with the community might be things that we should consider.
Good ideas. I'm gonna perfect my wave.
Do it. There was a lot of like bigger waving. They were having a lot of fun.
Okay, Heather.
I got to go to the VOAG this morning with a few other trustees. Loved it. They have an amazing program going on there. That was the first time I'd ever gotten the opportunity to go out there. I was very impressed. I also got to go to Glacier's theater performance of Bats.
Yes.
Those kids, what a group of students. They were phenomenal. I loved it. That was the first time I'd been to one of their performances, and I can't wait to go to the next.
Diane?
What a difference this fall, being able to see all of the students in their activities. Just exciting, nice to see all the kids excited. I'm thrilled.
She loves fall outside activities.
Thanks, Scott. I'm cold.
I also went to the VOAG tour, and I thought Brian did a great job. I've never been there, and I just thought what a wonderful program for the students. eventually when we're older, so they can participate in that. I know one would. And also too, it's Fun Week. It's, the fun run at, Edgerton, and I'm distributing the gifts on Thursday and doing the tallies on Friday. So it's a fun week.
Yeah.
No comment.
And my comment is, the MCEL, conference is scheduled for October 20th to the 22nd. It's all online. We do have a district registration, so you are all signed up for it. You can log in through the MTSBA site. I believe that's how you.
Yeah, they'll send us a link. And
Yeah.
as soon as I get it, I'll send it out to all of you.
Okay.
And so then you should be able to get on.
Okay.
I haven't gotten anything yet.
And they have some good workshops on there. It looks pretty exciting, so I encourage you all, to participate in that. It's, at least some of it. Okay? Administrative reports. And you know what, I realized we forget to ask Gwen if she's got a report for us.
I don't have a report.
Okay. Then we'll just
Thank you, though.
continue on, yeah.
Thank you for asking.
So,
Rebecca?
oh, Rebecca, do you have a report for us?
I do. I had the honor and pleasure of attending Glacier High School's induction ceremony for the National Honor Society. It was truly moving to see all these students step up and the lovely way they were celebrated. Good job to Glacier High School. To add on to Ursula's thing, one thing I've seen happen at homecomings is band members, and they throw it open to say anyone who's ever been a member of the band can come play for the national anthem or the school song. And I've suggested that to the band directors at the schools. And today we got to hear Glacier Band and Flathead Band play together, and that's truly a pleasure to hear how both bands are doing. So overall, it's been a good week.
All right.
Me?
Micah? Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna tag on to the BOAG, thing here. Brian sent me a text and a picture of the last calf was born today, and about 20 kids got to watch, and there's a very happy, ag teacher at the BOAG, so, it was kind of the icing on the cake for everything that we got to see today.
You missed the baby cow.
Here's the picture.
Oh, we should have stuck
That's all I have.
around. I know, right?
Kelly?
We've been busy this fall. One of the things that we have is the KEEP program, which is the Kalispell Educator Excellence program, where we have an induction and mentoring program. We had an induction session with our first-year teachers on September 29th, and that went a half a day with a wide variety of topics, and it was well-attended and well-received. We also have a session with our second-year teachers on December 1st, so that's coming, where we'll bring them in for half a day, and then they will also have the opportunity to go and visit other classrooms, so they can, if they maybe want some new ideas on classroom management or questioning strategies or whatever, they can go out and watch some other teachers teach. So the KEEP program is alive and going well and strong and receiving a lot of interest. We are in the process of submitting an application to present at a national induction mentoring conference. And it's like, yeah, we can do this. We have a really good program here, and we have a lot of phone calls and inquiries about our program. So we are going to submit an application to see if we can present at a national conference. So stay tuned. We'll see. Again, a lot of middle school and high school activities going on. Our student presenters kind of gave you the highlights there. I've had the opportunity to meet with the three high school principals and the two activity directors of high school to review the school goals. Very similar to what Brad presented this evening, but a little bit deeper detail, and it's just inspirational. They really are zeroing zeroing in on things that make a difference with students. And, good conversations with them, and they're very focused, and every single one of them have a plan. We are meeting as a, exterior siding committee for Glacier, because a little bit of the siding has moved on out of state or something.
It graduated.
Our last meeting is October 19th. We have made, a recommendation. We have a final color combination ready to go, but we are wanting large pieces so we can actually make one last look at it just to make sure. It's like in our homes, if you just have a little paint sample, it's like, whoa, I gotta have something big. So that's what we're doing on the 19th. So we'll have an unveiling after that, once we give it the A-OK. And then what will happen process-wise is we'll move it to Micah, who then moves it on to, the, committee that is in charge of, right, Micah?
Well, I guess my question is, do I get a vote then, or veto?
They're too late.
Nope.
It's not pink and purple.
It's a pleasing color palette.
Okay.
And it matches. And then the other thing that's coming up, which is exciting, is we're starting the annual process with the district stipend committee, and we'll be meeting, with that committee here in a couple of weeks. And, I'm waiting, I'm actually, the stipend committee topic is on the agenda for the board meeting here in 2 weeks, but it's probably gonna get bumped out because it's Arlene, which is fine, but I just wanted to give you the heads up that it's an annual process. Scott's the board rep on the committee, and I'll do a full-blown presentation so every single board member knows what's going on. And just as a little teaser, there's been questions, throughout the years that the school board has asked, like, how many stipends do we have, and what's the split? We have the answers. And just on the way of e-grants, so e-grants, is a fancy name for the federal budgets, state budgets that we submit. Your Title I, Title II, Title IV, gifted and talented, and all those have been approved. And even though Gwen said she didn't have a report, what I would say is Gwen has been working behind the scenes really hard to make sure that all those come together. It's all coordinated, and so thanks to Gwen and her team for that. And there's all kinds of final reports that we also submit to OPI for past grants, and every single one of those has been approved. And so we're running a clean slate here on approval and submissions and all that, and it's kind of a big deal. We put a lot of work in those, take great pride in making sure that things are as organized and tidy as they can. So when they come back approved by OPI, it's a big deal to us. So that's it. Just a lot of different things going on.
Thanks, Kelly. Matt?
I'm not gonna add anything of real substance from anything that's been discussed tonight, I know that. But I do wanna just point out that, we got all of these things going on with, talked about everything from facilities to tragic events in our communities, to COVID, to whatever. And when you show up at schools, kids are learning, and teachers are scrambling maybe to cover classes and things like that, but you get into a classroom and it feels good. Teachers are making real connections with kids. It's rigorous, it's good work, and it feels normal, and it feels like a really good place to be. So as much as it sometimes feels like there's just a lot going on, it's pretty calm, and it's pretty focused when you're inside of a building and then inside of a classroom. One thing Deacon mentioned in the chaos is we had some water damage at the Elrod this week. We had a steam pipe blow up in the library, and then it set off fire alarms, and so that's maybe just one piece of new thing. And I'll just end it there before we could have done without that, probably.
Oh, no.
Okay, and,
Sorry, I do have one more thing.
Yeah.
I thought Brad deserved a shout out when he was here, and then he presented, and then we kind of just moved on, but, I've had an opportunity to just watch him work with that staff couple times, and he's gone through just a really tough start of the year. And for him to show up and then present, kind of big picture, the things they're moving through, in addition to, just moving his staff along in the grieving process and the growing process with everything that's going on. He has done a really remarkable job, and, it's been inspiring to watch him work.
thank you for saying that. Please take a look at the, committee minutes from previous meetings and, the upcoming meetings. Okay, and, our next board work session, expect to be here longer. And we'll send out more details on that if we want to start early.
Yeah, and I think we can do some things to, as the agenda starts to get built, if there's things that can wait.
Yeah.
And I'll bring chocolate.
All right. Who's bringing the coffee? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Ursula. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Rebecca?
Wait for me, no closing this meeting.
Adjourned.
I'd like to thank everyone for the support. I broke it already.
Hey, it looks like you broke it.
I will present the virtual.
Remember, and where did you keep it for 2 weeks?
All about it.
Did you just say you have no idea
It's like a hot potato.
Where is that thing?
I know, it's like up.